Good day to all and welcome to the webinar on state of network experience. What we're trying to do here is allow networks and telcos to understand how the quality of experience is for the end users when they're in the real environment. It would not just allow them to understand this, but also allow them to be much more prepared for the 5G networks. And we at MOZARK are very excited to present to you this webinar, and we would welcome you all for this journey with us. A bit about MOZARK. We are a digital network connected experience platform. What we pride ourselves in doing is we bring in a cutting edge technology with AI and ML, where we also bring in data from different crowdsourced applications to give you a truly network analysis on how the actual performance on field for the end user is, which is the crux of where everybody wants to be. And in this digitally connected world where networks are interconnected with cloud, the CDN players, the content delivery systems, and then the device has a massive interplay as well. So all of this, since are digitally connected, they all need to be looked at together as an end-to-end experience rather than looking at them in silos. This just not just allows us to help the telecom service providers, but it also helps us to cater to banking, retail, enterprises, real estate, and it truly provides a complete 360 view of the quality of experience. Um, so we pride that this platform, and we are very excited ourselves to show to you this platform and show the study that we have just done to reach out to you guys. Our presence essentially is, you can see on the map, is across all the 4 continents. We've basically have local knowledge, local offices in all these places where we work very closely with operators, regulators, application providers, or content providers, and all the learnings from what we do in the projects in different parts of the geography help us bring in all that learnings back into the platform. So that truly provides a global platform from everybody to kind of learn from, engage in, and hopefully we can help you in your journey as well. Uh, I'm Mohit. I have got about 20 years plus experience in wireless networks across different life cycles. I presently head the India operations, and uh, I've worked with operators over these past 2 decades across different life cycles of engineering, sales, strategy, and I'm joined by my co-host Dion. Dion, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mohit. Welcome and good day to everyone in the webinar. Together with Mohit, we've been in the business for almost 20 over years. I lead the efforts for MOZARK in Asia. It's a very exciting time. Boarding and joining the family of MOZARK puts a lot perspective on what we're missing right now. I've been in the operators world. I've been in the vendors environment for quite some time, and we've seen many stuff, right, Mohit? The changes of 20 years of experience in telecommunications has changed so many things. It's changed the way lifestyles of every consumers today even react to the new application driven companies.
Sure. So let's dive into the journey right away.
Okay.
Well, the topic for today's webinar, like I mentioned, is what is the state of network experience for mobile operators in India. Now, the tests were done for over thousands of samples across multiple networks for over 6 months for us to come up with the results of the study. We purposely looked into the video streaming applications because we believe that more than 70% of the mobile traffic is centered around video today. And it's probably the most important service application that users are using today. What we did was we did the study across 6 major video OTT players, uh, right from Hotstar to Sony Live and Z5, as you can see on the screen, and came up with the study. The study was basically done with an approach where we wanted to look into the details of the packet and details of what is the final experience that the phone is measuring. Now, traditionally, operators have been involved in trying to measure the radio network, the last mile network. They've traditionally been looking at the voice and data services, and they test most of these application using devices where a lot of information is collected purely and predominantly in the last mile. Now, that is what we have turned around in its head, because what we believe is if you truly want to understand what's happening on a experience level at the customer's device itself, you would need to look beyond and above any of the traditional methods. Uh, you have had for the longest of time where people have looked into all of this in individual silos, uh, be it having some test on the CDN, being a test on the packet gateway, and then trying to correlate them. What we are saying is we are providing an innovative way. We are giving you an entire full stack, right, starting from the layer one, layer two messages up till the application level, where we are capturing information like TCP, DNS, the TLS, and each and every data exchange that the device is going through. So it gives a complete perspective or an end-to-end perspective, as I would call, for us to understand what's actually happening on a phone or a device. It completely changes the way the results come out, and it actually is able to give a lot more insight into how how the device is interplaying with the network. A very quick brief on what the solution looks like. It You can see on the screen. We have the application run on the devices where there isn't any SDK integration. There aren't any codes which are changed in the application. It What it does is that it is results in a zero impact on what a user would actually use his device as. It would not make any difference in terms of what the way your results are being collected. We also believe that these tests need to be done in a real environment, because that's where the end users actually use their phone. Uh, we want them to be in multiple geographies. We want them to be tested in different locations, and to ensure that the real world simulations are done and not done purely sitting in a lab. Uh, the results are highly reliable because the entire test is an automated script using robotics, and there is no human intervention at all. The test can be done repeatedly without any human intervention, and it brings in an extremely high levels of accuracy. So Dion, the entire system has been set up for a highly accurate and a reliable test case.
It changes the way operators now look at application behaviors. One, it is very non-intrusive. Second, it changes the way they look at investments in providing too many probes in the back end, which may not even provide the correct sense of measurement or reality. Like you said, in the real world conditions, it changes everything. It might even make the whole back end simple, because right now, this clearly shows that the measurements are not in the back end. Now we're looking at measurements at the customer's point of view, that experience that I believe we in MOZARK are looking into now.
Absolutely. In fact, that brings me to the first insight, Dion. Insight. So, what do we understand? What's the white paper talking about? So, the first thing that we are touching upon is that the downlink and the uplink speeds, what were usually measured as a measure of how good the network quality is a passe. What we are saying here is that downlink speeds and uplink speeds by themselves do not indicate how good your network is. Your quality of experience, what one is experiencing, has to be measured at the user device itself, and then that needs to be correlated back into certain amounts of KPI. So just an example of a KPI that we took is a play start time. A play start time is essentially the time from when one presses the thumbnail right up till the buffering happens. And that what we've observed in the study, and you can see the graphs on the right indicate the summary of the study. We've got on the x-axis the network speeds, the downlink network speeds, and on the y-axis we have got the play start time KPI. One can observe that while the speeds are below 5 Mbps, uh, the the rate of deterioration or the slope of the amount of time it takes to load the video is extremely high, uh, and it gradually starts coming down as the speeds move from 0 towards 5. But then once it reaches the point of around 5 Mbps, you can see that it takes a L-shaped curve, and the gradient and the slope starts to taper out. There is a lot of improvement in the play start time, but it improves till a point and of around 14 Mbps, after which there isn't any major improvement in the performance of the play start time. Now, what does that tell us? What it tells us is that two things. Number one, that downlink speeds by itself do not indicate to you how good your network is. I mean, after 14 Mbps, as we can see in this graph, even if the network speeds go up till 50, it really doesn't matter. So one, it's very important to look at what's that minimum operating threshold beyond which the certain app is not really going to yield me any more results. So that's one. The second, what it tells us about is that for operators, they need to be constantly looking into different kinds of app and arriving at the minimum operating threshold that they need to, so that they can uh, make sure that the minimum operating threshold is what they focus on, and not necessarily in a speed game of how fast my network is. And it makes a big difference in the way one starts to look into data networks and their optimization. So that's the first insight that we got. Moving on to the second insight, and that's interesting as well, is that apps also have their own interplay even amongst that, even within the same network. What does that tell us? I mean, if I just look at the graphs on the right, what you notice here is that there is all the different 8 OTTs which we measured. I mean, they all happen to be from the same category though, but there is a huge difference even within them. Now, like example for YouTube and Hotstar, even under sub speeds of less than 5 Mbps, they've performed extremely well, much better than any of their peers. But then if you look at Netflix, it performs extremely poor under the same conditions that I mentioned, less than 5 Mbps. But as soon as the speeds kind of reach towards the critical MOTP numbers, it shows a remarkable improvement. And that's the importance of understanding that even within a similar category, you can have very different performance from different apps. Now, why do we see this performance? The reason why we find is that each OTT app has got its first mile, its middle mile, and its last mile. Now, while the last mile might stay common, which is the end operator, there's a huge difference in how the content delivery systems have been set up within these apps. Where are these apps located? How much of this content is stored within India, outside India? Is the pairing arrangement between all of them in sync? Are there enough latencies between the gateway and the mobile operator and further on? So there's so much interplay between the CDN, the edge servers, that what one can easily find that in fact the apps do play very differently under a similar network operator. In fact, that even brings me to the next slide, which probably reiterates the point that how every app is different. If you look at the video streaming app, which is done in the study, versus a video conferencing app, you can see that in a video streaming app, the initial peak time when you start a video is much higher. You need to ensure that there are extremely high speeds of maybe 30 to 40 Mbps, which are need to be given, and then it kind of starts tapering down to almost 10 Mbps, or vice versa. In different cases it can be, but there are extremely high peak speeds that are required for this app. Whereas in a video conferencing app, which is a lot more real time, where both sides are communicating back and forth, the peak requirement not be as high, maybe even 10 Mbps or 15 Mbps, but it needs to be consistent. So the importance over there isn't as much as high peaks, throughputs, but consistent throughputs across the entire gamut of the conference. So what it suddenly gives is that the way I approach a video streaming OTT in terms of optimizing that within my network should be extremely different than how I approach a video. So instead of trying to optimize my network in silos of just looking at highest speeds on downlink, I would need to get a lot more understanding and a deeper understanding of how these different OTTs or uh, interplay with my network. And when they interplay with my network, what's their middle mile and their last first mile? Does the CDN need to be optimized with my network? So there's a lot of learning that comes out of this study, and that's the study that we need operators to start focusing on.
This changes the whole environment on how operators will now look at the behavior of every application. Every application now may change the way operators will define and design their networks.
Yeah.
Every application right now has a different behavior depending also of the environment and even geolocation based on what this insight is showing right now, Mohit. And it's a very interesting thing because most of the operators today are still thinking very traditional on how they build their networks, but essentially it's all now driven by applications, like you said.
Yeah.
Be it video streaming or video conferencing, the behavior is totally different.
Exactly, absolutely. And then that's exactly the point in the last insight that I've put, Dion, is that there are the operators which are hardly meeting around 20 to 25% of this minimum threshold requirement. So
Very
instead
true.
of going for a speed, I think there should be a lot more concentration on while improving the speeds, but not only looking at that, but also trying to then work with all the players within the ecosystem. So you can see that in the graph that the speeds were close to 20 before the lockdown, and I think the lockdown kicked in somewhere around March, and it went right up to June. But during the period of lockdown, we can very well imagine there must have been a dip because the traffic must have changed. People would have started working from home, and the entire traffic pattern changed. But it started picking up now, and what we see is that they don't really need to keep pushing their networks to the best and the highest throughput. They need to now start looking at this from a completely other perspective where they need to start and engaging a lot more with the CDN players, the middle mile companies which actually house the content and deliver the content, and also speak to the application players that as to how and where their networks are placed, and vice versa. Even the app and the content guys need to come together and talk to network operators and say, we don't necessarily always need to focus on the speed. We need to look at to how to deliver the best quality of experience to the end customer. So that's essentially the sum all of how what our learnings are. And uh, Dion, what have we learned from this?
Well, look at it. It's a very exciting time. That's what's one takeaway I can see from all of these insights. You know, the understanding of MOT may be a language that operators do have today, but it changes the whole dimensioning of how they build their networks, how they prepare for the onslaught of so much data speed requirements. And 5G is just around the corner. Most of every country right now have deployed 5G, but the behavior, like what you said in your insights, changes the whole game. It's not all about the upload, download, and latencies anymore. It's the behavior of the app that allows us to manage the network and at the same time provide that quality of experience. And what's in the center of it? It's that customer journey. It's that application journey that's so exciting today that gets Mozart up in its feet and providing platform solutions like what we have today. It may also drive a different adaptation for regulators and operators. They will have to now understand those behaviors in a more granular level. Why? E-commerce is driving most of their businesses today in different enterprises that you and I have been privileged to be seeing that most often. And these applications are driving economy, especially in today's pandemic time. What we have learned from this is that video and gaming is driving these high-speed traffics. The quality of experience becomes more tantamount. Visibility, transparency on how they build networks will totally change the whole paradigm. It may not be all about upload and download like what I said earlier. It's all about the application's experience. That's probably the new language and conversations that our listeners in this webinar should now partake and try to embrace. many of these connected devices demand for platforms. This pandemic today drives the digital new normal. And the preparation towards the future is defining where platforms right now demand for that time. And what is in the middle of all of these platforms? You have devices, you have tests and analytics engines. But what drives the three components in a platform today? These are IoTs. These are the onslaught of coming in with Wi-Fi 6 and 5G just running around the corner. Network testings are coming in from different directions. But the question is really is, what platform do they have to consolidate all of these experiences? In your scenarios earlier, it's not just about the network anymore. It's the last mile, it's the middle mile, it's the application, and more importantly, how applications now interact with third-party applications like payment gateways and various APIs in the data center. That's that end-to-end experience probably that network operators should start looking into. And that's what's getting us excited actually in MOZARK. In MOZARK, we look at it from different offerings. Our offerings come in from benchmarking. This is where we measure the performance of the application, the measurement of the operators and the data center, the performance, connectivities. We lead towards testing. This is where we pride ourselves with observing the behavior, like we said earlier, on every application that's in the network. Every application behaves differently. It may be connected to one operator or in a different operator in a different geographic setup. To that, we also add diagnostics. Diagnostics is drilling down deep into the application, into the network, like you said, where the TCP IPs are, the DNS flow-throughs, and how the connectivities are in every application that's driven. Even the uptime and the downloads time of every content is different. And as we prepare towards the future, we add switching. The ability to prepare operators with the applications they have in their network, or vertical companies that have that, to prepare them to the next switch, which is 5G. Like I said, it's just around the corner. Wi-Fi 6 is already happening today. And IoT is dominating everything. And IoT is driving smart cities, indoor requirements, and even understanding what the heat maps of every building is today. And we call that our indoor solutions. It leads us towards defining what customers we have in the market today. There's various verticals where our platforms can really be effective, be it for the mobile operators, the real estate companies, which smart cities are driving the change for them, application-based developers. In the enterprise, we enter to e-commerce, where banking and e-retail and e-transport right now is driving different economies. But the absence of what we have today, which are platforms where the center is device, test, and analytics, becomes a crucial factor that operators need to change and adapt to. Gone are the days of traditional testing. We have been sharing this in several scenarios wherein operators still think that traditional testing still survives today. Guess what? It has changed. Platforms now change the way we look at performance. And at the center of it, again, it's going to be customer experience. At the end of every reality, and what is evident today, is we can watch YouTube videos for 5 minutes. A great Instagram from family or business friends for about a minute. A fantastic application or advertising for a minute. But it takes only 15 seconds for any user today to uninstall an app and delete it forever. We in MOZARK want to be ahead of the curve. We want to empower our network operators and partners to have the ability to understand the behavior of these apps proactively. We have our robotic systems, we have analytic systems, and the capability to provide artificial intelligence to put all of these things together, to pull all the resources and data together. As we lead towards all of our scenarios that we have shared today, we would like to encourage everybody in this webinar to start to connect to our websites and download our white papers. Please feel free to just go through our white papers, our case studies. Mohit and I are available in Dion at MOZARK.ai and Mohit at MOZARK.ai. It's all in the screen. And please do share with us your journey. Share with us your experiences. Share with us how your application's behavior or may not understand what's happening in your network today. MOZARK is more than willing to sit down with you, have a consultancy opportunity, and have that conversation.
Absolutely. And thanks for the end. And I think I would also be looking forward for all of you to contact us. And thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Dion.
very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.